The Secrets of Tiddlers Pond, the Unsolved Murder of Albert Welch. Welcome back to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast, where we dig deep into the forgotten, the mysterious, and the utterly chilling stories that keep history awake at night. Tonight, we're stepping across the Atlantic to unravel a crime that has baffled investigators for more than 75 years. A grisly tale of dismemberment, deception, and a victim whose killer remains as faceless as the foggy streets of post-war England. Picture this. It's 1948. The tranquil grounds of Potter's Bar Golf Course in Hertfordshire, England, are as ordinary as they come. Dog walkers, idle chatter about the future of the green space, and the occasional sound of a ball thudding against a 9-iron. But beneath that veneer of normalcy lies a gruesome secret waiting to claw its way to the surface. That secret belonged to Albert Welch, a 45-year-old railway electrician who vanished on a cold November night in 1947, leaving behind little more than a cryptic note for his wife. "I've gone for a walk. Shan't be home for tea." It seemed harmless enough, until it wasn't. For 6 months, Albert Welch was a ghost, his whereabouts unknown, his fate a dark question mark. That is, until a boy searching for golf balls stumbled upon a decomposing severed hand in Tiddlers Pond. What followed was a discovery so grotesque that it transformed the quiet Potter's Bar Golf Course in the beating heart of one of England's most chilling murder investigations. The Metropolitan Police worked tirelessly, unraveling fragments of a story that only grew darker as the months passed. Who killed Albert Welch? Why was his body burned and dismembered? What sinister secrets lay buried in the gardens and homes surrounding the golf course? And then, just as things couldn't get stranger, they did. Phone call from Leeds. A man claiming to be Albert Welch, insisting he was alive, only to vanish without a trace, leaving more questions than answers. But even decades later, we're no closer to knowing the truth. Files remain sealed until 2045, locking away the answers to a puzzle that refuses to be solved. Until then, all we have are the haunting echoes of a man who stepped out for a walk and never returned. So tonight, we piece together the fragments of Albert Welch's final days and the gruesome crime that turned him into one of Hertfordshire's darkest legends. Stay with us, because this is a case that will linger long after the episode ends. This is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast. Let's begin. The grisly and enigmatic tale of a Potter's Bar railwayman, found dismembered in circumstances so chilling that remain sealed in archives for another decade, has captivated minds for generations. It's a story shrouded in mystery, blood, and unanswered questions. One that unfolded in the unassuming grounds of Potter's Bar Golf Course in Hertfordshire, England. Today, the golf course is a tranquil spot for dog walkers and idle speculation about its future use. But in 1948, this serene green became the epicenter of a macabre murder inquiry that shook the town. The Metropolitan Police launched an intense investigation, yet the full details of the crime were buried deep in classified files, leaving behind only fragments of a deeply unsettling narrative. At the heart of the case was 45-year-old Albert Welch, a railway electrician. He lived a quiet life with his wife and son in Cranbourne Crescent. But that calm existence unraveled on November 17, 1947, when Albert penned a cryptic note to his wife. "I've gone for a walk. Shan't be home for tea." The note was strange enough, but what puzzled investigators further was that Albert had taken his ID and ration book, items no one expected for a simple evening stroll. The trail of Albert's final moments is as perplexing as his sparse. Witnesses later claimed to have seen him boarding a train bound for Hadley Wood around 11 o'clock p.m., yet his wife swore she heard him returning home earlier that night, around 10:15. She didn't see him, but by morning, she found evidence that someone had been there. Tea had been brewed, though Albert was nowhere to be found. That was the last anyone could say with certainty that Albert Welch was alive. What followed was a disappearance that spiraled into one of the most disturbing cases Hertfordshire had ever seen. And as years ticked by, the official files still under lock and key, the town of Potter's Bar is left to wonder what really happened to Albert Welch. Why did his final walk lead to such a grisly fate? For 6 long months, Albert Welch's disappearance was a baffling enigma, a ghost story whispered through the streets of Potter's Bar. His wife Phyllis told investigators that Albert had spoken vaguely of leaving town, perhaps to seek work in the coal mines. But his sudden departure and the eerie silence that followed made little sense. Where had he gone? Why had he left so abruptly, taking only his ID and ration book? Desperate for answers, police scoured coal fields in the Midlands and the North, chasing whispers that Albert might be working in a pit somewhere. Their search turned up nothing. The only real lead came from a woman railway guard, who claimed she had seen Albert the night of his disappearance. She remembered him boarding her train around 11 o'clock p.m., bound for Hadley Wood Station, reportedly to attend to an emergency on the line. But after that, nothing. Then came May 1948, and with it, a discovery that would transform a missing persons case into one of the most gruesome murder investigations Hertfordshire had ever seen. A boy scavenging for golf balls near Tiddlers Pond, a Potter's Bar golf course, stumbled upon a sight that would haunt him forever. Severed, decomposed human hand. The authorities drained the pond, uncovering a nightmare lurking beneath its murky surface. Dismembered body parts, including a partially burned head and a hacksaw, its purpose chillingly clear. The Metropolitan Police, now piecing together a puzzle of horror, eliminated 35 other missing men before the trail circled back to Albert Welch. At first, his wife Phyllis refused to believe the remains were his. The manicured hand didn't match the rough, calloused image she had of her husband. But Albert's colleagues insisted he wore gloves tended carefully to his hands. Then came the irrefutable proof. A plaster cast of a severed foot perfectly fit his boots. The single fingerprint from the remains was a match. Albert Welch had been found, dismembered and discarded like refuse. The cause of death was grimly straightforward. A massive blow to the forehead, likely the fatal injury before the body was burned and cut apart with a hacksaw. Investigators widened their search to the homes bordering the golf course, suspecting Albert of being killed nearby. On July 2nd, 1948, police dug up the garden of a neighbor, an ex-Metropolitan officer who had been cooperating with the inquiry. Despite their targeted efforts, nothing was found. The gardens, backing on the golf course, yielded no further clues. And then came an eerie twist. On September 3rd, 1948, a man claiming to be Albert Welch called the Leeds City Police from a phone booth in City Square. He insisted he was alive and promised to explain everything. But by the time officers arrived, the caller had vanished. Was it a hoax or something more sinister? The mystery deepened. Albert Welch's inquest, held on November 18, 1948, brought the full horror into focus. Photographs of his remains and the gruesome plaster cast were presented as evidence. Forensic experts detailed how Albert's forehead showed signs of a brutal pre-mortem blow, the skull fractured, and blood pooling around the brain. Parts of his body had been scorched, the fire destroying portions of the forehead and jaw. The hacksaw, they concluded, had been used to dismember the body after death. Phyllis Welch, giving evidence, admitted she hadn't reported her husband missing until 3 days after he left. She assumed at first he was playing one of his usual games. disappearing to cause her anxiety. But she also noted his uncharacteristic secrecy. Albert had never gone out without letting her know where he was. Now she was left with nothing but grief and questions. The inquest returned a verdict of murder by persons unknown, declaring that Albert Welch had died the night of November 17th or early on the 18th. His medium build, brown hair, gray eyes, and the cyst above his forehead were etched into the records, but the killer's identity was lost to history. Diligent police work turned up nothing substantial. As years passed, the case faded into the shadows of cold case lore. Albert's murderer, now long dead, seems to have taken their secrets to the grave. And the final twist? The full records of the investigation remain sealed until 2045, leaving the world to wonder what truly happened to Albert Welch that fateful night. Who left his body scattered in the pond like a sinister jigsaw puzzle? The answers remain locked away, tantalizingly out of reach, in a crime that refuses to rest. And that wraps up this episode of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Chilling mystery of Albert Welch's disappearance and grisly end leaves us with more questions than answers. A puzzle frozen in time, final pieces locked away for decades to come. Was it a calculated murder? Crime of passion? Or something even more sinister? For now, we can only speculate. If you enjoyed this episode and want to keep exploring some of history's darkest and most intriguing cases, be sure to subscribe to Ontario Cold Cases. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. And don't forget to leave us a review. Your feedback helps us bring you the stories that keep you hooked week after week. Got a case you'd like us to cover, or a theory about tonight's episode? Connect with us on social media. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, every cold case holds secrets waiting to be uncovered, and sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. So stay curious, stay cautious, and tune in next time as we dive into another dark chapter of history. Till then, I'm Jay Nickel, and this has been Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Stay safe out there.